My why is because I believe every single person deserves to be heard. That every single person has greatness within them.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Master Your Life. I'm Kate McKay, and I'm thrilled that you're here once again, sharing in fabulous stories of transformation, grit, and the drive and power to commit to our highest and best self through mastery, through excellence, as we all stumble forth in this journey we call life. Grateful to be introducing my guest for today, Angela Meleca. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Kate. It's great to be here.
I'm super psyched because you have an art background and you're here to create greater impact through this. And this is something I'm very passionate about. Just a little bit about you before we get on into it. So, the guests here today, Ms. Angela is a true art champion. She combines her strategic acumen in policy development with an unwavering passion for the creative community. Her illustrious career, marked by significant contributions to art institutions, policy advocacy, and academia, has established her as a revered figure in the arts sector. She has a rich background in journalism and politics. Love this bridge, Angela. And she excels in forging connections between artists and critical stakeholders, driving progress and visibility in the arts in the world. Bang and a boom. You're no lightweight. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. We can dive right in wherever you want me to start.
Yeah. Well, just tell me about what was your first art experience? What turned you on to it?
So really my background, when I think growing up, it was, I want to be an author. Do I want to be an attorney? I went into politics, all of that. So it was really these non-artistic realms that I was in. But when I was 15, my sister got married. Her father-in-law was a retired executive and painted in his retirement and gifted them an oil painting for their wedding present. That was my first aha about original art. So it was more coming from it as a patron than an actual artist. And so my passion with collecting or, experiencing that authentic, I loved seeing somebody's hand in the work, really started forming in my teen years and kind of grew throughout, not realizing some 30 years later that I would be dedicating my life every day to championing the arts and the creative sector on communicating their value and worth. So it's kind of an interesting path, but I'm passionate, almost an arts advocate addict, if you will, which is a silly thing to be. But if you ask anybody that knows me, I could talk about, the importance of the arts all day long.
That's so great. And so it's an interesting blend, isn't it? So the art and the business, and it's usually like the left brain, right brain. And I just, for me personally, it cracks me up because I never really felt like I fit in with the theater group, but that's the only place I ever got A's in. It was really literally like, oh my gosh, I love the power of story so very much and the present moment. I mean, I believe it's the biggest gift we have. And I think it's actually truly what the gift is of theater for me. But I never felt like I fit in because I was always like a strategic, like macroeconomics, and I went to year law school. And so I was always more interested in that. So I felt like a misfit. So how did you find a path into the bridge between the two? Because I'm sure there was some challenges there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the word that I keep hearing you mention, which resonates with me to my core, is storytelling. And when I go back to being a journalist, I loved learning other people's stories. I loved telling a story. So I'll give you a quick story. I'm the youngest of seven. My oldest sibling is about 9.5 years older than me. There are five in 5 years. So as you can imagine, we were all seven children, all crunched together in 9 years. The next to me was 3 years older than me. So talk about, hey, I'm over here. It was difficult, being the youngest, when I'm 8 and my oldest brother's going off to college, I was on the sidelines a lot, or felt like I was on the sidelines a lot. I literally was their prop when I was young. I have photographs of me dressed up or being placed on a table or in front of them to be their prop entertainment. Don't remember those instances specifically, but I remember feeling a great sense of being seen in that moment. But when that skit or prop or whatever play that they were making me do was done, I was then like exit stage left, and their lives took over my life. And I really felt that I wasn't appreciated, or that I didn't matter. And so I can equate that. And I think more as I reflected in why I do what I do is because I feel at my core, I can understand the arts. Here they are, they come out and they give a performance, and then by and large are forgotten about or not thought about in the day to day. But the arts, and as you and I spoke earlier about theater, and really that what we're doing is theater, right? What the arts does, the arts teaches us essential skills that we can apply to any industry, to any aspect of our life.
Okay, so you mentioned the whole experience of being like knowing what it felt like to be the center, but then when you were not needed anymore, also feeling discarded. So it's an interesting parallel, right? And I think I had mentioned I'm also from a family of 9 children. The youngest girl, I had the lucky position, but whatever, right? 5 brothers, 4 girls. It's chaotic. So I know what that feels like to be needed, displaced. It's a weird adaptation that we have to go through in a big family. I would love it if you would carry on with that whole idea of what that was like for you.
Well, and again, this is years of self-reflection and thinking back, and really in the last few years distilling what my gift is, or how did I master my life, to take a phrase of your theme, which is, how do you remain relevant? How do you remain something or of content that is important or valued in the time? So I had to find my own voice in this chaos of 7, and having so many older siblings, that to remain relevant was something that I had to identify within me, what matters to me, what's important to me, and how does this fit in with the overall theme. So I'm on a renaissance of relevance, if you will, for the arts. And my belief is, if the arts can reframe their relevance, that resources and revenue will follow. So when we look at what are the struggles and challenges with the arts, well, it's declining audiences, it's not understanding their true value, it's not entertainment, it's not arts for art's sake, it's arts for outcomes. We talk about what tools theater can give an individual. It's not about the performance, it's about the process. The process is where transformation happens. But for decades, when we talk about arts impact, we talk about transaction. How big is your audience? What's your budget size? How many artists do you work with? What I want to focus on is not necessarily how big is your audience. That's important. But I want to talk about what happens to the audience when they attend, when they participate. And so that's where I think my skills in growing up, the youngest of 7, having to kind of fight for attention, fight for relevance, fight to say that I matter too, even though my views or my likes or dislikes might be different than yours. And so really I help arts CEOs find their uniqueness and communicate that in a way that's relevant to any other aspect of community, because we know that you need art, you need creativity to be inventive. You don't have innovation without creativity. And so how do we apply that, and how do we get that through to all other industries? And that's what
powerful point.
Yeah, and that's what I focus my days on.
Yeah, it's almost as though we look at the audience as the stage from your lens. I had this really cool image of you when you're talking about the audience. It's like, are you watching your audience? And
yes,
because the audience is in performance too. They're co-creating this experience. And so if you're just looking at them as numbers and not actual players. People who do understand that, if you look at more ancient theater, that the audience was very much engaged and they would throw things at the actors if they didn't like it. I mean, it was an interactive sport. Theater, and even orators, great orators were performers, and yet they engage with the people. And it's almost as though we've created the fourth wall, and using theatric terms, as a actual barrier of art communication. I think someone who broke through that, me personally, feel this way when I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, right next to one of the Dali Museum here. And just even the building and the architecture and his art, I think he broke through so many barriers as an artist. And that's why I appreciate him, because he was just so friggin' weird and innovative. People didn't know how to peg him. I think that we're missing that level of creativity in the art now, and the impact that it can have, and the relevancy of it.
Absolutely. And, and that's part of it too. I spend a lot of my time talking to lawmakers about why we should be investing more public dollars for the arts. And I think that your first impression when you think of the arts, you think of weird and different. And I every day hear, oh, I'm not in the arts, I don't get art, but yes, I understand why it's important. Well, people are creative in their own way every day. And so I tell those lawmakers, you've got to, I'm sure you're creative when you're writing your floor speech to get your fellow colleagues to vote for an initiative that's personally passionate or meaningful to you. And so if we can look at how we draw on creativity, if we hear now, if you see what are the top 3 skills that all businesses, employers look for: communication, strategic critical thinking, creativity. That's a muscle that we have to continue to exercise, just like anything else. It's not about a school play. It's not a nicety that you put on the shelf. This is about a creative workforce that teaches fundamental skills that we all need and we all should seek, or we will be left behind. How do we take our stories again and make them relevant to others? As you said, the audience, it's a two-way street. And so when you talk about understanding your uniqueness and what you offer, too, it's what is the audience getting out of a production or a class? It could be audience, it could be a student or a participant in a program. And when you have that factor, you can do 2 things with it. You can take that impact, whether it's you grow empathy, you increase kindness, you reduce anxiety, you increase critical thinking, all of these things that we know that the arts can achieve and do achieve in individuals. One, you can take that to funders and increase revenue. You can also take that to market to untapped audiences, to say, we all are looking for millennial Gen Z audience. Well, if we know what current millennials are getting out of participating, let's say they feel more connected to community, they want to engage experiences in person, take that, what they're getting from participating, and use that as a marketing, just like any other brand. I may want to wear Nike because I want to feel like an Olympic athlete. You market that, your audience feels more connected to community, and use that to show what you may experience if you too come and participate in whatever my creative offering is.
So powerful. I think another part too, when you're talking about the niceties too of theater and the things it learns, it's also the messiness. And I truly believe that in this culture that with all the niceties are what's drowning out the depth of being able to handle conflict. And it's interesting because I was just interviewed on 2 different podcasts, one that were mostly professional athletes, and the other one was the Army. And both of them wanted to focus on handling conflict and having honest conversations. And that is something that we can teach, obviously, through the art. And I think that it's an interesting thing because I grew up thinking that art was only fine art, because that's what my mother valued. Like, fine art was a big deal, and writing and authorship, but fine art. So when I moved into, when I was in theater, I always felt like I'm not really an artist, right? And then I sort of adopted, yeah, I was. But then when I developed a multi-million-dollar company, at, when I had 3 young kids, I knew I had to apply those same skills. I look back in retrospect and realize it was my theatrical ability that taught me success in business, being able to manage relationships, conflict, high intensity, and understanding that creativity is also creative thought. It's creative action. And, we have to be both creative and productive to be successful in this work. Creative every single day. We have to think about what percentage of our day we're being creative and what day we're being productive. And if we're just being productive, it ain't going to go too far, is it, Angela?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you said something that I hear all the time as well. I launched a podcast called Arts Redefined because I'm on a mission to redefine what we mean or what we think of when we hear the word arts. I say, when did the arts become a 4-letter word? Again, during the pandemic, I wouldn't think about walking into a legislator's office saying, I'm here to talk about the arts, because you get that kind of non-verbal eye roll of like, oh my gosh, we've got such greater things that we need to tackle. So when we think of the arts, we don't think of an individual. Arts isn't an object, it's a mindset. And so when you just said, I'm not really an artist, that scenario plays out in many minds. I teach at a university, arts administration and arts entrepreneurship. And I ask the students, when you told your parents that you wanted to go and get a degree in arts and arts management, how did they respond? Because we all know that we think of, what are you going to do with that? How can you really provide for yourself? But the word arts entrepreneurship, and if you think of what an entrepreneur is, look up the definition. It is the exact description of all the characteristics that create an artist. Artists are entrepreneurs. And so you just described in your own life that you applied skills that you learned in the theater. You said, I really didn't feel like an artist, but boy, I think I heard the word $1 million in a
Yeah.
business scenario, right? And so
Mhm.
that's what I'm on this mission to do, is to change how we think of the word arts. What does that mean? And how can we apply it to all lives and all industries? One quick example as well, at this university where I teach, the nursing school tapped the theater department. I know you're going to nod at this because you've mentioned multiple times how theater taught you these life learning skills. But, we've got this nursing shortage. And so the nursing school tapped the theater department to come and teach nursing students improv and other techniques that they practice in theater, because they realize that those same techniques help nursing students combat, being overwhelmed and burnout and the anxiety with that. And those skills are being applied. There's also visual literacy. How do you see? So we've taken now workshops where typically we would speak with docents about fine art. How do you look at this painting? But now we see corporations applying these same workshops to manufacturing and to other industries to prevent safety hazards or accidents in the workplace, because we're teaching these employees how to, when they're walking on a factory floor, identify a potential hazard before it happens. So all of these life skills through the arts can not only prevent, save lives, but also create prosperity and increase economic development and workforce readiness.
That's very true. It's super true. In fact, I read an article, I think it was in the Wall Street, about how there's a direct correlation. There will be the biggest growth will be in the humanities with the development of AI, because AI can never be smarter than us. We need to get smarter as people. And smarter is not just like the academic smart, but creative, and creative in how do we foster curiosity outside of what we know. And I think that is sorely limited.
Yeah, absolutely. I say advocacy can't be automated. Advocacy has to live. It has to be authentic. And you're right, with AI is only as smart as the information or the prompt that we give it. And so
Mhm.
it's a tool, and it's a tool that we should use, but it should also help us, as you said, think in more critically or more creative ways. And so, and someone once said, that we've spent the last 25 years automating everything, which has sucked the humanity out of everything. And creativity or creatives is the only thing that puts the humanity back into something. And so when we can recognize that, yes, we want efficiencies, but we also know that we have to have that authentic process in putting the humanity in production as well. That's what will set us apart.
Yeah, that's so, don't we love this? I mean, this is so my jam. And I think it's
I'm
because
so glad.
and I think it's because I've always felt so uniquely, bizarrely different that I never felt like I fit in either way. And I view myself as an entrepreneur because of that, because I know that I kind of beat to a different drum than people, but I feel this conversation makes me feel like I'm not as alone in understanding the validity of the bridge between the two and how we can be so moved. I was shocked to hear the statistics, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are on this, that AI is most heavily used with very educated people, and the people who are most fearful of it are the people that have the least education. That's not discerning even age. That the people who have been using AI the most are the people that are highly educated, BA plus. That's a bummer for me, that we have people that fear what technology is able to bring. I simply feel like I cannot believe how awesome AI is in ways to expand my thinking. It's addicting to me because I'm such a lover of language, and it's a language-based aid. And that's what people need to hear. That's what it is. It's a language-based tool to help evolve your thoughts. And as you mentioned earlier, the information you get is only as good and as deep and as intelligent as what you provide it. So I think it does require creative usage, to be perfectly honest.
Absolutely. So when I was a journalist, I used to say to people all the time, reporters are only as smart as the information that they're given or that they can find. And so provide as much of that information. If you want to get a story placed, right, and get into earned media type thing, provide as much of the content as possible to make it easier for that person covering it to understand, digest, and then be able to regurgitate out what they heard you say. I view AI the same way. It's basically, a computerized or digitalized reporter where I'm saying, okay, this is what I'm curious in, or this is what I'm, understanding or wanting to learn more about. Give it to me. Regurgitate back to me what you can gather behind the scenes. It's a search engine. It's a very powerful, it's like Google on steroids. One thing too that I hear you say, and this is, the problem I solve is disregard, and this could be applicable to any business owner, any industry, disregard. And what's happening is when we become stagnant, when we don't, and I hear yourself almost like mini reinventing yourself, or not reinventing, but evolving. We constantly need to be evolving and being aware of our surroundings again to get back to, so we continue to be relevant. So those that live in stagnation or the status quo, those are the ones that are going to be left behind. And I see a lot of that within the arts in particular, because we're under-resourced, we don't have capacity, we're understaffed, our budgets are bursting. And so we're afraid to try something new. But by staying stagnant, by staying in the status quo, we've done this the same way for 30 years, so why not continue? That's going to continue to strain your organization, and it's also going to prohibit you from getting greater investment. And so I'm on this path of taking outcomes and turning that into investment, or impact into investment. And how can we communicate in a more direct way, get away from the fluff that the arts uplift? I say a bra uplifts, or at least we hope it does. But the arts are foundational. And let's talk about what that foundational component of the arts are and show it in a more data-driven way. Because if we can talk like other industries, what's your return on investment? I now say we need to show what the return on art is, or your ROA.
I love that. So good. So progressive. And it's so true. It's so very true. I think history also is a wonderful teller, right? I mean, what is the history of art and how it has evolved? And sometimes art is birthed out of great tragedy, right? When things really fall apart, like the Renaissance came out of the Black Plague, right? I mean, so it's like, what is the rebirth of art, and what will it take to rebirth? I believe it's similar to that quote that says, good times make weak men, right? And so my hope, eternal hope, is that there will be an incredible rebirth with the changes that are occurring, whether it's global event, elections, all these things that are going on. I do believe we need to be prepared. In what ways do you feel that we can prepare for this oncoming change that is inevitable?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And so that's where when I, coined the phrase the Renaissance of relevance, that came to me after living through the pandemic. I was able to lead a coalition that raised $160 million in 3.5 years from one of the most conservative Republican caucuses in state history. My point saying is the arts are not a political they don't pick partisan sides. And oftentimes we see, Republicans as much or more than Democrats funding. So again, my focus is how do we get greater investment in the arts, not only from public dollars, but also from foundations and investors, et cetera. So I believe this renaissance of relevance was born out of the pandemic because I saw a lot of arts organizations start falling back into the ways that they operated before the pandemic. And that set out alarm bells in my head. And that's when I knew, wait a minute, we can't go back. If not now, when? When can we reimagine the impact and the relevance and how we communicate that to the world than now? And so that's my mission, is to really do it on a platform that's greater, because we all need to be unified and come together to communicate that way. And so I think we can and will move in that same direction because there are people like you. I have these conversations every day, and I'm testing my theories. I'm testing, my knowledge and what I'm talking about. That's coming from hundreds and thousands of hours and conversations with individual. It's resonating with you. You're getting it. And I've got to believe that, there are a lot more Kates out there that think in this mindset that if we can just know that, hey, I'm not alone, that there are like-minded people like me, and if we come together, we really can realize or revolutionize how we think of and invest in arts and creativity. That's my end goal, and that's part of what my podcast I'm hoping to build, is this community of like-minded individuals just like you have here with your audience, that realize that we can in fact realize change by all working together. We all sense it. We sense that kind of need for move out of this stagnation that we've been in for the last many years, and let's kind of propel forward through it.
Right. Well, the reason why I love art is because of its messiness, to be perfectly honest, and the way that it makes me feel. And from my perspective, because I'm in personal development, is that I want to ask people, as you're talking, what was that first poem you read, the first piece of art that you saw that made you want to cry, or made you want to throw up, or made you feel? That is where the origin of creativity is. That's the origin of impact, is where is it that you read or felt or saw something that made you feel a certain way, that in that moment is when you are required, where God calls you forth to take action, because art would require movement to move you enough to make a change, to say yes, the feeling, the passion. I love this expression. I read it years ago, that if your teenager is stuck, if you're having problems with your teenager, whatever that is, ask them what pisses them off. Because if they can say what pisses me off is they're going to tell you, right? But we can ask anyone, because if you're that numb that you can't tap into the rage or to the sorrow or the mess that is humanity, that's when we're in trouble. I remember looking at this art of Kathy Kollwitz, and I don't even remember I just remember the etchings, and they were tragic. Kathy Kollwitz she drew like starving women and baby. I just remember the trauma of seeing it as a child. And yet those are the images that stuck to me, that like I could literally cry right now, because it's that feeling that I am here that for more than this. If someone can capture something like that, I am here for more than what I'm settling for. That's where I think we need to revolutionize. That's where we need to gather together to say we are here to express more than what we're expressing.
Absolutely. Again, it goes back to what I say. We got to get away from transactional thinking and we have to get into transformational thinking. A lot of times we focus on immediate gratification. What's something that I can just, what's the investment that, what's my return on investment quickly? And we got to start thinking more about long-term success, the transformation. How is this going to change something? So you talk about art and the impact. Think about music, a song that when you hear it, it takes you back to high school or, homecoming or, any a sporting event, anything that analogy that you want to draw on, a book, or as you said, a poem, it could be a painting. All of those things impact us. We all have had that moment, but I don't think we think about it. And we think about it as, again, this extra. And again, by and large, I'm talking about public officials that I talk with daily on realizing the impact and why we need to invest in art as a preventative. Arts is a prevention. And if we spend more in preventing, we'd spend less in correcting. And again, that's in all aspects, whether it's addiction or loneliness or suicide. I also say it's not about the performance, but it's the process. And I tell organizations to don't be afraid to show the mess behind the art, which you touch on so greatly. Because when I'm lobbying for money, I have legislators say to me, why do we give to the arts? The arts are for, I've had rich white old people was actually said to me during the pandemic. And it was like, whoa. And I tell this story often because it took me a while. I processed that. Why is there still that connotation after all this time? We know that's not true. Oh, wait, I know why. Because for 40 years, when we've engaged lawmakers, what do? We bring them to the orchestra gala. We bring them to the opening of Hamilton. We take them to the Nutcracker. What do they see? They see magic. They see perfection. They see something that is aesthetically beautiful, but they also see in the audience, by and large, especially at a gala, affluent older people, and most likely political donors as well. And they think the arts aren't hurting. But what I say is rather than taking them to that performance, take stakeholders. It's not just public officials. It can be, corporate leaders, foundations, community stakeholders to the process. Take them to see them staging Hamilton. Take them out front the theater when you've got, all the semis lined up to unload the props and the sets. And we've got builders and lighting techs and sound techs. We support manufacturing. We're a highly skilled trades workforce, but we don't show that. I use this analogy, when Honda wants a tax break, they don't take the governor to the Honda dealership and say, look at the 24 Civic, isn't it beautiful? They take them to the assembly plant floor and say it takes these many individuals to build one car. That's what we need to do in the arts when we're talking about the creative workforce. We need to show the sewers and the set builders and the staging and the people in the administration, all of the jobs, all of the highly skilled jobs that we employ, that actually all of those skills can be applied to any other industry as well.
So true. The process is where the magic is, and you can see all the elements and what's required to put anything together. That's so valuable. So what is the you mentioned the word disregard as being the problem, and we look at the other side of that as to be highly regarded, right? And so why is that important, that word for you?
Because it's the core of, I think, how majority of nonprofit arts feels that they don't have a seat at the table. They're not understood in a way, again, that they are relevant to all things in society, community. And so if you're highly regarded, you're viewed as relevant, you're viewed as you matter, you're important. Therefore, not only will we pay attention, but we'll actually apply resources and revenue to what you're doing. So as we have hyper focused on STEM over the last, 3 decades, and we've seen arts or creativity or the humanities marginalized, I feel, again, this Renaissance resurgence of now saying, oh, wait, so we've got all of these individuals that are, highly trained in STEM, but they are not critical thinkers, or they don't know how to collaborate, or they don't know how to integrate. So again, it's not one side or the other, it's yes and. And it's beyond putting an A in STEM to have STEAM. There's an organization that's in my community that partnered with a university to open a STEM high school, partnered actually with the Ohio State University to open a STEM high school. And they said, we've been in the STEM school business for 20 years now. And we've learned that if you put a student in front of a computer and teach them coding, all they learn is coding. So they don't call STEM science, technology, engineering, and math. They now think of STEM as strategies to engage minds. And when I heard that it gives me kind of the chills a little bit, because what are they talking about? Strategies to engage minds. That's what artists, creatives do every day. So we need to bring back that creative process in all teaching, in all classrooms. I'm seeing this movement happen more and more. It's like on the grassroots or underground level that we need to advocate to school districts and superintendents and administrators. We need to be on higher ed campuses and talk about these arts departments or arts programs are just as important, arts management, as your business schools. I know students that leave business college and go to the arts management program, not because they want to go into the arts, but because they want humanity back into management teaching that they feel isn't in the business school. Business school's more transactional. They want to be transformational. So it's, how do we realize this? And how do we do it from a lens where we all know it in the arts? So what I say is we've got to get out of the closet and go cross sector and talk to other industries and show them that mess that really produces highly regarded outcomes.
That's so good. This is so good. So if people are listening to this right now, and I know you're developing a couple of programs to have greater impact for businesses and the arts on that level, but what is some of the things on the grassroots level that we can do as humans that are maybe just slinging along here, but want to have a greater impact in this movement?
Yeah, I think, again, to go back to advocacy is so important, and we need to communicate and educate. That's what advocacy is. It's educating, it's bringing awareness to a cause, regardless of what industry you're in. But the first thing is, advocacy in my mind happens locally. It's not at the State House. It's not on Capitol Hill. That's great, but that's like checking a box. It needs to happen in the district. It needs to happen in your area where you live. And it's an engagement. And when we talked earlier about, you're only as good as the information you're given. When we're referring to AI or we're referring to, a reporter, that's the same as a politician or a community stakeholder. And so don't be afraid to lean in and engage and bring them out to show them a little bit of your mess, what you're doing every day and how you're impacting community. So that's the first thing. It's not easy. It's time consuming, but if you can make it into, bring people together for a coffee, do something once a quarter. We can't also advocate when we need something. It can't be a transactional beginning conversation. It has to be a relationship building, just like anything. And so identify first 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 stakeholders that aren't in your circle that are important or should understand what you're doing and what impact you're having on community, and engage them and just begin the conversation. Develop, cultivate that relationship. That's, again, where we get that authentic communication happening, and engage more than once and just do it on a regular basis. And slowly over time, that's going to pay off and produce dividends for you, because when you do need that greater investment, you'll have that understanding. You'll have an ability to have a dialogue, and then also get people to advocate for you. So those that benefit from whatever you're doing, those that are having a transformational response, or other industries that, again, if you're a theater, for example, or any of these other arts centered on focusing on businesses, look at the one-off restaurant or bar or, other industry that benefits from you, engage them and have them talk about the importance that it is that you're in community. So there are multiple ways, but it starts with just capturing who needs to hear and understand on a basic foundational level the work that you're doing. I engage with them and start cultivating a consistent relationship, whether it's once every 3 months, once every 6 months, not just at the performance, not at the gala, but engage them on that more foundational messiness that we talked about, that's going to also not be as intimidating. A lot of people are intimidated if they're not engaging with the craft or the art. They don't know how to show up. They don't know what's appropriate and what's not. So let's kind of bring down those barriers and invite them at a time that it's more engaging and less intimidating.
That's so good. And what are ways that on the more of the grassroots, even more than that, what are the ways that we can support the rebirth of art?
I think going simply as you mentioned growing up and the impact that you saw, it's really understanding that art is an industry. Art can be a viable career. And so when we think of an artist, that we don't think of, oh, this is somebody weird or someone that doesn't fit in, but we think as someone who is another spoke on the wheel that we need to keep the engine running. And so first it starts with just shifting your mindset, being open to other people's opinions. We also know that art bridges communities. Art exposes us or allows us to understand, where someone else is coming from, a perspective that we don't necessarily know. So it's simply engage and think of art not just as, quote, that lives inside four walls, but art can take many different forms and shapes. And so just having that open mind, being able to see more and collaborate, come together. Don't be afraid to share your perspective or engage. Invite somebody to participate with you in an activity that they might not otherwise do. And just little by little, on that very basic grassroots level, we can start to have this ripple effect wider. So go outside of your circle and engage those that you think might not have been exposed or might not quite understand, and do it in a way that's let's go have a personal experience together. That's what we're finding more now, certainly younger generations. It's all about community and they want to engage with one another and go experience something. Start promoting, if you're in the arts, start doing your grassroots outreach that way and encouraging those to invite others, collaborate with other businesses, food trucks, or if you've got restaurant week or things like that. It's all about cross promoting, cross engaging. Too much, again, we stay in our own lane when we're in the arts. Start thinking about reaching out to those, even other industries that you don't understand, and be curious and invite them to come and be curious on your end as well.
That's so good. Love this. Such great information. Huge value. Well, I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. You're certainly an inspiration for me as a person that has struggled trying to figure out how I bridge even those aspects of myself. I often will say to people that I'm I'm more complicated than I appear, because I think people make generalizations based on what we do for work. And to even break those barriers and be able to speak our own truth, I think is a magical elixir of courage, and also of regarding ourselves and the gifts we bring to the world and up-leveling those. And it's funner together. The bottom line is, my gosh, is it fun?
Absolutely. And and Kate, I would say too, and you're saying it right there, it all starts with us. It starts with you. Don't disregard your worth. Don't disregard your value and what you bring to the table, but value it and know it to your core that you offer something that is important and valuable. And when you can walk into a room with that conviction to say, wait a minute, this is important and I do bring value and I am relevant and this is why and this is how, that's where it's going to start. We need to stop discounting ourselves individually. We all bring a unique gift forward. And if you can just find a little bit of that and honor that and don't shy away from that, that's when we're going to see this renaissance happening. So I tell anyone out there who feels that misfit, I certainly feel it and felt it too, but it's not anything to shy away from, but lean into it and embrace it, because that's what the world needs.
Yes. So agree. Love this. So right now you have a couple of things that are brewing. If you could just give a little information about where people can find you and how they can support your really super valuable work, that would be great, Angela.
I appreciate that. So Arts Redefined is my podcast that I launched last month. You can find it anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. I also upload those videos on YouTube, Angela Meleca YouTube is the channel. Also, I'm launching a pilot project this fall where we're going to be measuring art's impact in a way where we are going to measure empathy, kindness, creativity, things that you didn't think that were these tangible benefits. So if you'd like information on that pilot project and and phase 2 will be rolling out after the first of the year, you can email me at info@instituteforartsimpact.com. And I'm on all social media as well. So I shouldn't be hard to find. Reach out. I would love to hear from you. If anyone has a story that they'd like me to hear and tell, I'm welcome to all.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thanks for the inspiration on this day of someone so deeply committed to their passion and their purpose. And I love it. I'll just forever have this image of you, Angela, as the showpiece in your family. And I just love it how you brought that. It's such a trip, right? Just because we identify with the big family thing and being able to, transmute that into something really powerful, despite the positioning in the family.
Absolutely. And again, it was a long journey to realize, oh, that's why I'm passionate and can feel on such an innate way that I do. I always felt loved, but as you know, in a big family, there's a lot of jockeying that goes on. So not unlike in the real world. So I help arts leaders jockey to get in front of the line and a seat at the table.
It's so good. Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you to all you viewers and listeners for tuning in to Master Your Life. I appreciate you. And don't forget, life is theater. And go out there and speak your mind, draw your passion, and be an integral part as we all gather together to have greater impact in the arts and the world. Until next time, be well, everyone.